don't have the slide. No, I do not, unfortunately. Hi guys, thanks for coming. This is, we actually did not set it up yet. Hold on 1 second. This has to plug in here. Check, check. That works. Since we're recording it for those who can't come in, I want to make sure that we do have the aux turned on. We do. Oops, wait. And up. Bizologie, custom business research. I love your bullet points. They're very succinct. Help you learn about industries, investments, and more. April, Kessler. Partner, Chief Research Analyst, MBA, Master's in Library Science, and a librarian, which is a title of its own. 10 years, business librarian, McCombs School of Business, UT Austin. Research analyst, Austin Ventures. Knows how to communicate effectively with entrepreneurs and with angels and investors. You teach competitive intelligence at UT Austin School of Information. Lindsey Schell, partner, Chief of Business Development, librarian, 10-year managing digital resources at UT Austin Libraries. 3 years business development experience at ProQuest, largest library vendor. I think they know what they're talking about. I'm Joe Payton. This is Genius Dan. You all know me. If you know of a startup, a serious startup that really wants to grow, we'd like to talk to them and possibly have them here. That's my commercial. Thanks for coming. Wine and beer, help yourself. Don't be afraid of standing up and going there. Presentation is going to go fast. It's going to be high content. We'll have a video. We'll have the slides. If there's anybody you want to share them with, the video and the slides, feel free. If you have a question, you want to wait till the end if possible?
Yeah, we'll take some questions in the middle too.
Middle. Okay, good. Ready? Thank you.
Thank you, Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you having us here. We're excited to see you guys all tonight. So Joe did a great job introducing us. We're Bizologie. We're in Austin. And we're happy to help you guys figure out some of the things that you'll be looking for when you're hearing a pitch.
Okay, so the question, why do you need competitive intelligence? First of all, performing due diligence on an investment that you're considering. We have all heard the impassioned speeches of a startup founder who's very excited about what they're doing. They're absolutely certain they're going to be the next big thing, the next unicorn, if you will. But the passion also needs to be backed up by data and some validation that they have somewhere to go in the marketplace. So performing business research, looking at what you're investing in and the overall market for that product. Where does this product or company fit into that market? Who are you investing in? Who is this individual who has started this company? What have been their previous endeavors, and were they successful in those? Were there any exits, that kind of thing? And are there any potential new verticals or new customers that startup will have access to through the course of your investing?
One of the first things we do with business research is take a look at a publicly traded company. So just a quick reminder, the public versus private. We're business researchers, so we're always looking for secondary market research. And these private companies, as you know, do not have to report any of their detailed financials. They don't have to report anything. So the SEC is requiring these publicly traded companies to report everything. And so that's where we're looking for a lot of that data. These public companies are who the analysts are following. And so we're looking to find those public companies. And that's what Lindsey's going to talk about right here.
Right. So when we begin looking at a startup and the industry that they're in, we start by trying to identify a proxy company in either the same or adjacent industry that we can use to pull data. And we're looking at that public company's competitors. We're looking at, like I said, the same industry. We're looking at who their customers are, and we're looking at their monetization scheme. So those things can be applied in a similar fashion to the research that we're doing on the startup.
And we're gonna show you, we'll go through this kind of basic overview, take some questions, and then we'll show you a case study. So you'll get to see kind of this in action when we get to that part. So with the public companies, of course, we're looking at their investor relations page. And so this is something you can do. We'll talk a little bit about how you can bootstrap some of this on your own as you're looking. And then, of course, how Bizologie can help. But some of this, a lot of it will kind of help walk you through what you should be looking for and how you can do some of it on your own. And the first thing would be, again, finding that proxy company that you're looking for, and then taking a look at those SEC filings. Also, the glossy annual report that they put out, it usually is their 10K. But if they put out the glossy, they'll include a little more visualization of some of that data, and of course their letter to their investors. And the SEC filings that we're always taking a look at are, of course, the 10K, the annual, the 10Q, the quarterly, the 8K, which are all their kind of key developments, anything that's happening with that company. So I always joke that if anybody in the C-suite sneezes, then there's an 8K, and that's pretty accurate. I mean, if you think about Apple, when Steve Jobs got sick, there was an 8K, because that's how influential Steve was to Apple, and his not being there could impact their stock. So everything gets an 8K pretty much that has an effect on the bottom line. And the S1 we call the holy grail of SEC filings, because that's what is actually written by an investment bank. And we'll talk a little bit about investment bank reports, but those are hard to come by. You can't buy them on the open market. But the S1 is written by an investment bank right before the company goes public. So they were private, and now they're going public. This is really the sales document before they even get to go public. So there's a lot of good data in there, lots of looking at the market as a whole. Of course, the proxy statement. So when you're looking at a team, who's running the company, who owns stock in that team, the proxy statement is where you'll find all the salary, the owners, the stock ownership, how much they own of the company and all that good stuff, their bonuses and all the good gory details about how much they get when they leave. That's some fun stuff to look at. And one of the tricks that you can use, if you don't have access to the investment bank reports, which are really expensive, you might have investment bank reports from your broker on a company, but when you want to look for what are the other banks saying, you don't have that access. You can't just buy them. You have to subscribe to one or two particular databases that have that info. But the earnings and the conference calls are on the company's website. So they usually have the audio of the call, and sometimes they will have the transcript. Sometimes you can find the transcripts on morningstar.com for free. But that's a great way. The audio is great. If it's one company you're interested in, you might want to listen. But honestly, if you're going to look at a couple companies, you're going to want to search the transcript and not listen to hours of boring conference calls.
And so just one thing that I would add to that is the fastest way to get to that data is the name and keywords investor relations in a Google search.
That'll get right there.
It'll bring you right to that page, which is usually buried somewhere down on their corporate site.
That's a very good point. If you go to Nike, you see lots of Nike tennis shoes and running gear. But to get to the investment in the filings, that's a good way. And then also SEC Edgar, EDGAR, is where you can find the free filings too.
So one of the next pieces of information that you might want to look for is a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And these are often available online, again, just searching for keyword SWOT and the name of the company. This one came out of a MarketLine report. And what's nice about these is for these large public companies, what appears here as a weakness or a threat may be the strength or opportunity of the startup that you're looking at. So those are things that you want to take into consideration, and vice versa, of course.
And those opportunities and threats in a SWOT analysis, if you remember back to that business class from a long time ago, those are the external factors. So if whatever industry you're in, if you pull up a proxy company and you find a SWOT analysis for them, you've got your opportunities and threats for your company. So you've got half a SWOT written for your company. So it's a great way to kind of get ahead. So here's a look. We did an industry overview. We found this was initiating coverage on Fitbit. So this is from an investment bank report. But what's interesting here, this was on Fitbit, but Fitbit's reporting information on diets and gym and pedometers. So it's looking at all these different markets. So if you think Fitbit's not my competitor, okay, but if you're doing anything in the grocery market and you're interested in diets or upcoming trends in diets, Fitbit has some information on the diet arena. So it's, again, we're kind of thinking more broadly about research and that industry that you're playing in.
And the next piece of information that you're looking for, of course, is the TAM, the total addressable market. And then below that, the segmented addressable market and the serviceable obtainable market. I always get those confused. And so when you're looking at a pitch from a startup and so forth, oftentimes they will have a TAM or they'll have a number of what they believe to be is their TAM. And that's often a very large number. And you want to ask them a lot of questions about what they believe their SAM and their SOM are, right? Because that total addressable number, while it may be $3 billion, based on their current business model and the fact that they have 2 programmers on staff, they're going to have a much smaller obtainable market within that total. So I would want to ask if they know what those smaller numbers are, if they have some good metrics and methodology behind how they arrived at those numbers, and if they don't, then, you know, be looking at some of these proxy companies and what they believe the realistic numbers are in that industry.
Yeah. Who are those competitors, and are they being realistic about what slice of the pie they're actually going to get out of that total addressable market, for sure. So here's an example. This is really a holy grail of total addressable market. I can't say I find this for every industry I research, but this one actually comes straight from Salesforce. They put this together and they put this out on the web for free as part of their Dreamforce conference. And what's awesome about this, and it's harder to see from the back, but they've broken up this enterprise software landscape into a bunch of smaller markets. So if I'm looking, sometimes all I can find is this big number for enterprise licensed software, which is pretty big. But this breaks it down, so I can see web conferencing is 10% of the market. So if I'm looking at a web conferencing company, this gives me a better idea that 10% out of this whole enterprise software market is web conferencing, and then the company you're looking at is going to get a slice of that 10%. So it's helping us narrow this huge total addressable market. We had a startup that came to us and said, we want the total addressable market to be this many billions of dollars. We said, well, that's not really how we do it. We look to see what the size of the market is, and then you're narrowing it down. So even if the market's huge, you're competing with Salesforce. So what is your slice of the pie?
So the next piece of information that we look for are all of the legal, social, and political considerations beyond just the product itself and the viability of that product and the viability of the market. What are the external factors that may have an impact on the success of the company and the success of the product itself? So for example, for our med tech clients, especially if they're working in devices, they need to take into account the medical device tax and how that plays into their business model and their monetization. You can also look at regulatory concerns, especially local ones. So companies like HomeAway and Airbnb are constantly monitoring the local regulatory concerns for short-term rentals and making sure that they are doing everything they can to keep their clients, their real estate clients, in compliance with those. And another one that affects you and affects the startups is the recent changes by the SEC on who qualifies as an accredited investor. So that is something that is perhaps an evolving landscape.
More crowdfunding coming in.
Exactly. And then the last example, Justice Department decisions around antitrust rules. And Bizarre Voice is a good example. They were just given a bit of a slap on the wrist for an attempted acquisition. So those are all things that, that the startups may need to be concerned with if they are in fact looking to be acquired by a larger company, and what is your potential return out of that.
If that's your exit strategy, understanding what that exit environment really looks like is important. Mm-hmm. And of course the team, it's who you're investing in, so not just the company and the industry, but who those people are. So really finding out where they come from, how successful were their last startups, how well they're doing, how they spent the money they got before. So maybe this is their seed funding, or maybe this is maybe this is Series A. What did they do with that money? What did they do with their seed money in that first company? If they're serial entrepreneurs, you can really ask some good questions about how they spent their money before. And maybe they didn't do a good job, but they learned a good lesson about how to do it next time. But asking those kinds of questions is really important.
So one of the next pieces that we look for is information about a company's customers. And if we're looking at a software company, usually they have a very specific idea of who their customers are within a particular industry or particular type of engineer, particular types of programming languages. Those kinds of things are easily identifiable. But what you may be interested in are what are the other things that that customer does with their money, with their free time. How do they make decisions? So we recently did a project for a company that was looking at entering the high-end private jet market. It's a company that makes engines for other types of vehicles, and they're entering the jet market. They want to know, what else do private jet owners do with their money? So we found this fabulous chart. This actually came from a trade journal that had surveyed their members. The trade journal was called Millionaire, and and they spend on average $1.7 million a year on fine art, about $250,000 a year on fine jewelry, and a number of other things, cruises and travel and so forth. So so this is very important to understanding who the customer is, what their mindset is, what they're looking for when they are in the market for purchasing a private jet.
That was a fun project to work on. And competitors. We're definitely talking about who the competitors are in that market and things that you're thinking about. Of course, you're automatically going to think about the direct competitors, who in the space it looks just like you and does the same thing. But don't forget about the indirect competitors. They're slightly like you. They're serving kind of that same market. And maybe they can kind of come in to that market easily. We just saw Uber switching from just transportation and share ride service to delivery service. So they're starting to break into this other market. Or complete substitutes. We were talking about really emerging markets. Maybe there isn't anybody just like you. Nobody does this thing that you do yet. Those are the fun projects to work on, because then we say, you're going to substitute something. What is it? Are you really, we were joking about the jetpack. If you come out with the jetpack, are you replacing the car? Are you replacing air travel? How far does it go? Is it really just like a bus or a car or a bike? What is it replacing? What are we measuring that's going to be that market for you? So coming up with the substitute.
So this is another way to measure competitors. This particular, it's a market map of sorts. And Gartner is very well known. It's an information company that has a very well known, actually trademarked name for these market maps, the Magic Quadrant. So if you do a Google search for Magic Quadrant and then the industry, you'll often find these things popping up in the image search. But essentially, they're measuring on this one a company's ability to execute against the completeness of their vision. And this one is specifically measuring companies that are in the cloud infrastructure SaaS business. So right up at the top, you've got Amazon and Microsoft that are leaders in both the execution and vision. And then down towards the other end, you've got Google floating in there along with IBM, VMware, HP, and GoGrid. So this is just one way to visualize the market map. You can search online for Magic Quadrant as a name. You can also look for market map. You can create your own. You don't have to use a Gartner version of this.
Here's a visualization of the shared marketplace. So this is a good example. They're breaking down the shared economy pieces by the different verticals. And this is, again, where I was talking that, okay, you're in the space market or the personal services, but now Uber was moving from transportation into personal services and things like that. So you'll want to know like who's playing in that market, possibly in these different verticals, but then looking in your direct vertical, but looking out to those competitors to see who might be moving. This is just another way to visualize that easily so you can kind of see who might be moving where.
Then the next piece of information that we're looking for with regard to competitors is their funding. From whom have they already received funding? How much did they get? When did they get it? Was it a co-funding type deal from multiple firms? And can you find any information about what they were using that money for? Are they using it to hire additional developers? Are they opening a bricks and mortar office? There's a variety of reasons why they might be seeking funding, and it also is interesting to look at the sequencing of the funding. So if they're well beyond seed or A, to look at how close together the different rounds that they've received have occurred.
And this is coming from Crunchbase, which is a free, I see a few head shakes. People know about this one. So it's crowdsourced. And some of the subscription resources that we use also can tell us the M&A market, the IPO market, and things like who were the banks that were the advisors on those deals. So if you're looking at an exit, who might be a good advisor in that space to help with those kinds of deals. So I was just mentioning some of the licensed resources. These are some of the licensed resources that we use at Bizologie. We have Capital IQ and Thomson, which are getting us the financial deals. Good for private companies. Not as many angels listed in there, but very good on the VC side and the startup side. So we see what they're doing and who they are. And that's a great resource. I use it almost every day because we're almost always pulling a list of like companies. Tell me who is in this space that does something like me. And it may not be exactly, but I can do searches in the descriptions of the company, even the descriptions of the product. So I can really get down to like, what do these people do? Maybe it's not their full-time gig, but what are they developing? What are they selling that could, again, come over into your space and become a substitute? And we've got Factiva for news and marketresearch.com. Again, a lot of, they're an aggregator of a lot of market research. So firms that are doing like tech research, but then also maybe biomedical. So lots of different market research available from there. And then our investment bank reports, again, are a lifesaver for us.
So these are some of the free resources that we often recommend for those who maybe don't have access to the licensed and subscription options that we have. Crunchbase, we mentioned before, it's crowdsourced information about private investments. Most companies will maintain their own profile on here and keep this up to date. They want people to know information about them. PricewaterhouseCoopers Money Tree. This is an aggregator of VC data, so if you want to see what the trends are in VC funding across a particular geography or a particular year, you can go in and see, the industry, SaaS software in the Western U.S. For 2013 and 2014. And see who all of the investors were in that set. The formds.com is just a nice collection of all of those SEC filings and so forth.
So if any private company is receiving any funding, then it's over a certain amount, then they're required to fill out the Form D. So you can see sometimes before it hits before somebody's updating on Crunchbase. These are what the subscription databases are aggregating for you. But if you're doing it on your own, this is a good way you can go in and search those FormDs.
The Indeed job postings, this might not on the surface seem like a lucrative place to go find information, but actually if you go in there and you're looking at competitors and you see that X competitor is now hiring 20 engineers, something might be going on there. And you can also determine what the competitors believe to be the market rate for those salaries, what kinds of benefits they're offering, and how your company can remain competitive in that environment.
Definitely.
And then the freemium, the so-called freemium, these are subscription sites that offer some of their information for free. So the Biz Journals, as a corporate entity, Biz Journals operate in 40 American cities, and they are fantastic for getting local information. They frequently interview private company founders who will offer details about their growth strategy that they may not have reported anywhere else. Statista is a nice aggregator of statistical information about a great variety of things. They are pulling their data from credible sources like Forrester, Frost & Sullivan, Gartner, et cetera. The free portion of Statista does not tell you where they got that information from. So that's sort of where they hit their price break on getting you to subscribe, is so you can see where that data originated from. But if you use theirs, you can cite Statista. And then eMarketer is just another option for getting some very nice statistics. They're particularly good in the social media coverage for emerging markets.
And more free resources. Don't forget social media, of course. Keep an eye out for what those companies you're interested in and your competitors are saying out there. And you can use Hootsuite to kind of set up some news feeds. I like Twitonomy. You can do the news feed there too, but you can also put in competitors and see who's following them, who they're following, who's retweeting them, and what kinds of what things are getting retweeted. So if you're also helping your company develop a marketing strategy, this might be an interesting way to kind of see people like us, companies like us, are getting retweets on these topics. So this might be something we should tweet about. So lots of different ways to use that social media. One of the interesting things when you're looking at your competitors is looking to see who's, what their CEO is tweeting. Sometimes, again, it's like the Biz Journals. They're not required to put anything out to the SEC. So we're digging around for any information that they're going to give us. So maybe they do an interview with Biz Journals, or maybe they just start tweeting about the new people that they're hiring, or a new manufacturing plant that they're building, or maybe they even are so excited that they hit a revenue number that they post that on Twitter. It has happened, and that's great. That's information for us that we didn't have before, and that's a great data point. So I'm sure sometimes their PR people are like, okay, stop tweeting. But as researchers, we love it because we're like, tell us everything. Tell us all the dirt. Get excited and tell us everything.
Another great place for free information is trade associations. And there is an association for absolutely everything. And they often do their own research. They survey their members. They produce publications. Oftentimes those publications are free. If they are only available to members, the company that is a part of that industry may look at becoming a member so they have access to that data regularly. It's a good idea to get involved early in an association just for business reasons, but also to get access to the kinds of research that they're producing, the white papers and so forth. Oftentimes, if they are charging for the current year white paper or research report, they will offer the previous year for free, and there's not that much difference in the data from one year to the next, so it could be a useful data point.
And don't forget forums. Look to the places where your customers are hanging out. So this was an example. We were doing some research for a company that sells to programmers. And so they wanted to know things like, what are the programmers programming in, and what are they doing? And so this is Stack Overflow, and it's where the programmers hang out and ask each other questions about what they're working on. And these guys did a survey of their members. So everybody who's on Stack Forum, tell us about yourself and tell us what you program in, tell us who you are. So it was a great way to get some data on that company's their customers.
And then lastly, Google search strategies. And, you know, we've all had the experience of going in and throwing in our keywords, and you get 1.7 million hits back, and you might look at one page, and maybe one of those on the first page is actually what you're looking for. But there's a number of ways that you can make your search more efficient and more productive to get exactly what you're looking for. The Google News is highly customizable with keywords. So if you are looking at medical devices specific to spine injuries, you can develop a Google News alert that will bring you just that data. If you are looking for statistics in the market, in addition to the sources that we mentioned earlier, the U.S. government is the largest producer of statistics of any kind, and they are very difficult to find on the individual government department websites. So if you do a keyword search in here and limit to site.gov, you will be much more efficient at targeting the kinds of data that you're looking for, rather than floating around on a federal agency website. Also, if you are looking for white papers from a competitor or just in general from the industry, file type PDF is more likely to bring up the type of information along with your keywords very quickly. And file type PowerPoint is a great way to pull up other companies' internal PowerPoint documents that may be freely floating out on the open web.
And if you know it's a number that you're looking for, the file type :Excel is a great way to find spreadsheets that are around. So again, it's just that file type : limits to just those types of files. And so again, it helps when you put in your keywords, you're limiting all of that you're finding. So a great way, a good librarian tip for searching Google. So we'd love to, if you guys have any questions right now, we'd love to take some questions, and then we'll run through a quick case study that will show you some of the research that we did for one of our clients. What questions do you guys have? Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to take that one or me?
Sure. So the question is, how long have we been doing business research, and what is our typical client? So my two partners and I met working at the University of Texas Libraries over 10 years ago, and we've all been practicing researchers since then. And our company, Bizologie, has been around for about a year now, so out on our own for a year. And we have a variety of clients. We started out with venture capital firms. That's what Laura, our founding partner, and April have experience with working at Austin Ventures. And we expanded that to other